Good hello everyone. This is a palm reading, a full palm reading for a 44-year-old lady who would like to know about her life, her career, love, and how best to use this information. Ultimately, this is a palm reading with a view to improve the self. It's a palm reading for self-improvement. I've got here some pretty clear images. I'm going to be looking at the marriage lines here. I'm going to talk about the personality through the fingers, fingernails, the thumbs, and also obviously I'll be looking at the fate line here. Some of the key features that I can see here on the heart line relating to this person's emotional makeup and the emotional experiences that this person has been through, how this person has coped with those, and how best to utilize these experiences. And I'll obviously be talking about her lifeline as well, being that she would like to know more about her life, and I can see distinct differences between the left and the right hands here, with an overlapping lifeline on the right hand only. So there are distinct differences. And one of the first things I really pick up on is this large square created out of several lines here. And this is fairly significant, so I'm going to explain what this means as well. But first of all, I want to talk a little bit about this person's personality, who she is, the character makeup, personality traits, all defined through the palm shape and the fingers. It's not easy to categorize this person in terms of the system of four. If I was to look at this left hand, I would say perhaps an air hand. The right, however, very earthy qualities. So I'm going to look at a different system of categorizing. The left hand presents as energetic, whereas the right hand is still energetic, but there's a bit more of a dynamic element. On the left hand, we see an extra length to the thumb. On the right, the heel of Pluto, or Luna, as some refer to the lower regions of Luna, it's slightly lower hanging. And if you notice in this image here, the right thumb is actually a little bit longer than the left hand thumb. It's a little bit longer than on the right. Both energetic and dynamic, and people tend to be on full overdrive all the time, highly motivated, highly ambitious, hard workers, very energetic, and dynamic hands more so. In fact, dynamic hands don't know how to switch off and are quite often at risk of adrenal burnout, and that can be seen when we see lots of vertical lines on all the phalanges of the fingers. Thankfully, we're not seeing that on the tips of the fingers yet. However, when we start to see that, that's when we really start to see um, adrenal exhaustion. See a bit more of that occurring on the right hand again. The right hand appears dynamic, whereas the left is more energetic. And it's curious, really. And I think this person probably had two very different parents. Both this person's parents were extremely hardworking, just like, the characteristics that I've mentioned here, energetic and dynamic. One of the key characteristics that are really combined that really connect both the dynamic and energetic is that they cannot be confined. They need freedom for expression, freedom of movement. In particular, in relationships, dynamic hands really can struggle. And I can see that there likely has been some difficulties in relationship in one particular love in this person's life, but we'll get around to explaining that. The fingertips themselves seem quite spatulate, particularly on the left hand. We're looking at someone who is a person of action again, someone who really requires to see physical results from their efforts. Notice how the Mercury finger is kind of veering away from the rest of the fingers as a whole, and again, this shows someone who is really in need of a little bit of freedom, who cannot be confined. Notice how the Jupiter finger is very straight and upright, and in a way it kind of leans away from the rest of the fingers on both hands. And again, this is someone who's very independently thinking, someone who has quite a strong desire to make an impact on the world through their work, through their efforts. And the headline, notice just how long it is. This is always seen on the hands of people who affect the lives of many through their intellectual efforts. Now, one key feature I do want to point out, which I'm going to touch on at some point at the end of this video, is this here. Notice we see a fish shape here, quite clearly a fish at the end of the headline. A remarkable sign. This person requires a challenge, something really to get their teeth stuck into and to work with. Notice how the top of the palm is wider than the bottom. Bachelors, again, action. This is a person who is constantly thinking, constantly highly active in their minds and in their imagination as well. This is a strong and very sort of springy, resilient appearance to the lunar mount, which is a really nice sign. The Jupiter and Apollo fingers appear very level. This is an excellent sign. Their ideas about what it is that they are capable of achieving are in line with their self-worth. This person is highly capable of achieving potentially even fame. I say that because this is one of the signs of fame in palmistry, a level Apollo and Jupiter finger, backed up by this increased height of Jupiter right here. The Jupiter mount is a little bit higher on the right hand, which is a really nice sign. The length of the headline as well. These things combined really show us a picture of someone who has a good sense of their own capabilities, a realistic understanding of what they are able to achieve, and a good sense of self-worth. And they will think very independently. They are kind of a non-conformist. Not to the extreme, not to the point where they can't take criticism, but what I do see, and this is a lovely sign, is a whirl on Apollo, and it's just look how wonderful this whirl is. There's just undoubtedly someone who has a very unique idea of the beautiful things in life. And quite often as well with a spatulate Apollo finger with a whirl on it like this, we see it on the hands of people who are quite keen to refurbish, upholster and recycle, upcycle goods, furnishings, wares, clothing. They have a good eye for fashion. Notice the fate line and the skin ridge patterns are just around the origin of the fate line that all flow with it. This is a great sign. It means that energies here flowed organically in terms of where this person was meant to head in their life. They went with the current, they went literally with the flow, and it comes from a place of deep memory, of subconscious thinking. And so they're really able to access the abstract. And this is leavened by the headline because overall it's very straight. There's a very level headed and logical lateral thinking approach to this person is a high planner, and they are likely able actually to take on deadlines, to work under pressure quite well. And it's again, like I said at the beginning, this is someone who actually loves a challenge, who is a bit of a workaholic. They actually excel under pressure and they just love the graft. They love the grind. But at the same time, it's really important that this person knows when to stop because being dynamic, being so energetic, they do have a tendency to burn themselves out. And that is a big kind of risk for the dynamic hand. This person is something of a leader. There's certainly some strong authoritative signs here. There's good use of control. And I think this person is a leader of some sort, a boss in some way, and has certainly leadership qualities. I can see here some Dupuytren's contracture here with the curvature of the little finger, and this is always seen in people who have high amounts of Neanderthal DNA. Neanderthals were said to be highly creative, highly resourceful, and a little bit more psychic than the rest of us. This person is humble, serious, gracious. I see that by the formation on Jupiter here out of the experiences they had when they were young, as well as the little loop here seen in between Apollo and Saturn. And I'm just going to get into the early life for this person. So we can see here early on in life, notice this ambition line rising right up onto Jupiter, reaching up onto Saturn here. This is an experience that was really quite difficult. And out of it, there's certainly a strong need here to make the most of it. And through our experiences, we learn tremendously. This person certainly has. I can see an ambition line here that is probably about the age of 22. And this, combined with this early life experience, with a need to, really turn this around, turn a negative into a positive, has almost kind of created this large triangle here, triangle on the Jupiter mount. It's not completely isolated, but it's a very strong sign. Triangles are always fortunate because they always indicate some form of study, of learning. And as I say, this person has learned from her experiences and it's enabled her with a skill of diplomacy. Now, I've already mentioned grace and humility. This person has really quite an ability to safeguard others' information. Um, there may well have been a trip to hospital at the age of 7, and this 22 or so, this need to change their life, to change their circumstances that they found themselves in. I can see there's a square here, and it's formed out of support, influence, um, a Mars line right here, a guardian angel line, if you like, a need to be supported physically, to assist, to repair. And so I feel this is potentially a hospital visit here. That is what this square also represents. 25 to 30, I believe. And that's what this shows here on the lifeline. The age of 30, I believe there was a move. Notice how the lifeline overlaps here, and a fate line can be seen rising from it. It's confusing because it almost looks like the lifeline reaches upward onto Jupiter. It's not quite the case. It actually continues on down here, and you can see the it overlaps, and it overlaps because of a move. This person moved and changed the way they live their lifestyle. On the left hand, we see what's internal. On the right, we see the external. So this person has moved away at the age of, I believe, about 30 years old. And their fate, their path in life is affected at this time. It's about here. When people travel, we often see these little sort of licks on these horizontal little lines kind of stroking in from the percussive side of the hand. But we also see escape lines, which are these kind of curvature lines here. And I see a very faint one here coming from the inside of Venus here, making its way to lunar outside travel, restlessness, exploration. It's not strong, and it's tied in with this health line here, which is certainly showing some digestive issues, which is very common in the dynamic hand because so often dynamic hands have high Neanderthal DNA in. And unfortunately, that's one of the signature traits. This person likely has IBD. At the very least, and I'm wondering if in fact the hospital visit was related to the digestive tract in some way. Now, curiously, at the stage they are in their life right now is about here. They're coming out of this very sort of protective phase of their life. And I would think that actually they're in a karmic year right now, 44. In 10 years' time, I believe they will travel. 44 on the fate line is just about here, in between the head and the heart line. So it's around about here. Notice how the fate line is dividing at this time. It's more faint, it's thinner, it's a bit wiry. This secondary fate line doesn't really know what to do with itself either. We've also got this overall fragmented kind of obstruction here. These are emotional upsets. These are disappointments here. The heart line reaches over, branches down, reaching towards the headline, asking for, heart is asking the mind for support. The heart is asking for logic at the time when it is unable to operate. And there, unfortunately for this person, has been a fair few amounts of upset, disappointments, emotional hurts. And at the moment, it seems This person has just experienced one, and it's divided this person's possibility for where she can go. It's created a crossroads. She's at a junction in her life. In the left hand, we see the fate line as stronger and a bit more set in stone, whereas on the right hand, we don't quite see that. And what that's really telling us is this person has always kind of felt like she's been on one course. However, the right hand shows us differently. The right hand shows us this person has more control over their destiny than they realize. And this, in part, is the power of palmistry. It allows us to take control, to understand our strengths and our weaknesses. It's a powerful and ancient tool for self-improvement, self-discovery, and awareness. And I'd like this person to really take that on board, take control, take those reins. Now, remember I said this person was humble, has humility and grace. And I notice here on the Apollo mount, there is a square beginning to form. It's not quite there yet, but it's close. Just one more side is needed. And the square on the Apollo mount, if you've watched my other video on the Apollo mount and the signs explained here, you'll know that this person is protected in terms of their creative success. And it's an excellent sign. It means that there's a strength in their potential towards artistic and creative success, and it's likely that this person will not be intoxicated by their success. And this is high potential on the cards for them, should they choose to drift in this direction. 55 and onwards really starts to see the beginnings of success for this person. Another square I've seen on this person's palm is on the third phalanx of Mercury here, the third phalanx, and it's near a grill, but not quite. It's more of a square. There's lots of vertical lines and two horizontal, which just almost form this square here, and it's a very mystifying, it's a very confusing sign because in itself, it's a sign of a very mystifying person, their nature, their aims, and their deeds. They are very secretive, and it makes a person very difficult to understand. Now, I've already said that their right hand is dynamic and their left is energetic. There are two sides to this person, and they're not polar opposites. There are similarities, certainly. I've already mentioned a few of those. I would suspect this person puts on something of a tougher exterior. And there has been at times, I think, for this person, the potential to, in some way, attract conflict. And I think it's extremely important that this person avoids conflict wherever possible. Because for this person, that's not productive. Some people actually, conflict is required. A little bit of conflict goes a long way in terms of repairing and self-discovery, loving a challenge, hard work, needing to do things in their own way can sometimes get this person into a little bit of trouble. So I would really highly recommend avoiding conflict, especially in social situations, as much as possible. This person has, I believe, one child. I might be wrong about that, maybe two, but I think one. I'm going to stick with one. We see the family ring just here, and there's an island on it here. Islands, well, there are two islands actually, but one is stronger than the other. And if we look at the attachment line, particularly on the left hand, we can see one line rising from this attachment line. That's a child from this union. There is a potential for a second, though, which is why I think it's possibly two. The other family ring is seen underneath the Mercury finger just here. And again, you can see one island here, a potential for two. Now, as I've said, this person has at least half of a dynamic nature. Dynamic people often struggle in their relationships because they're so dominant and authoritative. They, in a way, need someone who can handle that dominant behavior, but at the same time not be dominated. This person won't enjoy living with someone who is too submissive, but also cannot be confined. So they really struggle in terms of finding a match who is able to understand and work in a very sort of diplomatic and balanced approach. To have that level of understanding it's it's difficult to find in a partner. So this person has likely struggled in previous relationships. Their current relationship, at least I think they're currently in a relationship, although it may well have just come to an end or is coming to an end, shows us here the relationship seen. Notice how it's reaching down. It's not tremendous. I've seen much worse. I've seen happier people in what looks like a worse attachment line. It's, I say bad or worse, as in when an attachment line reaches downwards, it shows us how the relationship is weighting us down. It's bringing us down. It's moving. It's pulling towards the heart line, gravitating towards the heart and emotions. It's making us feel low. Now, quite often, this is just the practical and material pressures of the relationship. A lot of breakups are due to money, financial issues. For this person, money has certainly been an issue. The headline rising upwards towards outer Mars, it is said to be this, conscious effort towards, fears around the financial security of the future. It's really curious to me to see this sort of upward strokes from the headline here. As I say, thinking about the future, thinking about security, and it sort of reaches towards this little square here. It's a kind of a diamond with a little fork tail on it. I mean, you might say this is a fish, but maybe it is. But if it is just indeed a square, I would say that there has been some way of planning ahead and this has enabled this person to escape bodily harm in some way. I find it really strange how the heartline creates this as well. The heart line is kind of representing this physical, or at least emotional bodily harm. There is indeed almost a square here as well, seen on it's in between the central plane of Mars and outer Mars. I can't help but feel this is related to conflict of some kind. Remember, I said earlier on about this person, the need to avoid social conflict. I think this person has been in some way involved in some kind of conflict, but has escaped bodily harm, was protected in some way. And there's certainly some planning ahead. I don't know if that is linked. This person is a strong planner, and I think this is an event that relates to something that happened where you wouldn't really be able to plan ahead. Diet is certainly something I would recommend. I believe this person really needs to see a dietitian and to really kind of rule out what is good for them and what isn't, what suits their digestive tract and what doesn't. And actually, and it might sound a bit extreme, I do think this will dramatically improve this person's life. In terms of career, I'm just going to sum it up quite simply. You're at a crossroads at the moment. It depends which way you want to go. I would recommend choosing something that's artistic, that allows for expression, that doesn't confine, because this will ultimately lead towards success and increases and enhances the communicative and artistic creative abilities, which always helps to serve a person with self-development, self-improvement, helps to express themselves. And that in turn always, I think, helps alleviate possible conflicts, either within or otherwise. The other career routes this person could venture down is something a bit more conventional and still likely artistic. It's a bit more of a kind of 9 to 5 route, something that is not potentially as satisfying, but might make a bit more money in the short term. Essentially, it's up to you. What would you like to do? The choice really is yours. Fate quite literally is in your hands in this case. Now, in terms of love life, if indeed you are at the end of the road in terms of your current relationship, I don't foresee anything in future, but that's not to say that that can't happen, that the lines can't change, because they can and do all the time. I think one of the key lessons for the dynamic and energetic hands, actually, I'm trying to surmise for both, is to find a way to work smarter rather than harder. For the dynamic and energetic, there is a feeling that working hard creates satisfaction, and that's not always the case. Now, as I've said, in 10 years' time, I do believe you will travel again. And actually, I think you will travel closer to where you started off. The lifeline works its way around the base of Venus, indicating that a person will die in their native homeland. There's another incident of travel again in 20 years' time. And these are great signs because it's showing that possibility for travel means that you need to have that money behind you and the time off to do it. It's showing the possibilities. Freedom is ahead. Freedom is on the cards. However, choice is quite literally yours. Now, as promised, I said at the end of this reading I would explain the fish sign at the end of the headline. The headline forks, it's known as the writer's fork, and it provides excellent perspectives. It enables a person to see the views of others from different angles at the same time. And it's why writers have it, because perspective is so obviously very important when writing something like a novel and getting inside the heads of all of our characters. It's extremely useful for actors, lawyers, writers, and psychologists as well. They all tend to have this sign. It can lead to some indecision, but this little island here that enables this fork to kind of spring out of it shows us an experience. It shows us a trouble that creates a bit of a wisdom, and then that perspective flows and follows from that. So initially, there is a bit of a hurdle, but afterwards, the experience of which provides us with a life lesson, provides us with wisdom. It's a very spiritual sign, it's a very religious sign. It's often linked to religious study, religious beliefs. It was said that Jesus had the sign of the fish at the end of his headline. Interestingly, I don't see nearly the same thing on the right hand. This shows an entirely internal transformation, a spiritual one. And, initially when I looked at these palms, I thought, these look like the hands of an astrologer. They certainly have a good ability to explain things with this nicely pointed and well-developed tip of Jupiter. Now, where I would advise this person in terms of self-development and personal growth is in their emotional articulate abilities. I want this person to talk, speak their feelings more. This might make them feel a little bit uncomfortable. As I said, I think they put on a bit of a tough exterior, but this will truly strengthen and enable this person more in terms of their expressive abilities. It will in some way enhance their creative abilities, and I know this person wants to do that. At times for this person in relationships, I think it's a common theme where it might just be easier in some way to create conflict, to in some way articulate those feelings, to express those emotions. Whereas actually formulating in words, putting it all out there on the table in quite an impartial, an objective, and diplomatic way, this person might well reap the benefits from doing that and feel more at peace in doing so. And I know this person has those diplomatic skills thanks to their many powerful experiences that they've had when they were young. Thank you for watching this palm reading. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm very keen to know if you have any thoughts on any of the things I've said here. If you would like a palm reading yourself, please email me. You can go to my website and book one there. There's nothing quite as powerful as knowing yourself. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.